Hey, what up? It's Tampa Brad back at you with law number 43 of the 48 Laws of Power. Law number 43 is work on the hearts and minds. And really, what it has to do with is A, are you a likable person? And B, do you have positive relationships with people? Or are you just using them? And so a great example to start off this video is one that Robert Greene talks about, and is that of Marie Antoinette. And in case you don't know who that is, she was the wife of Louis XVI, who was the last king of France right before the, drumroll please, French Revolution. So if you think that those two are connected, they absolutely are. So Marie Antoinette was famous for living in the Palace of Versailles and spending a ridiculous amount of money on just a crazy lifestyle. She was also famous for not giving a single, let's bleep this out, about any of her subjects, and literally just doing whatever she wanted. This lady was the one who had the famous saying, "Let them eat cake." That was not a fun, positive saying. That was actually her response to one of her ministers who was saying, you know, "Madame, the people in the streets are so poor they can't even afford bread." And so she says, well, why do they need to eat bread? Just let them eat cake. That showed her level of disconnectedness from the people. And what that led to is because she didn't work on the hearts and minds of people, when eventually the French Revolution started to get going, her and the royal family and Louis XVI were actually removed from Versailles, which is out in the French countryside, and forced to move back into Paris in kind of the royal quarters there. That was actually an opportunity for her to be closer to the people, be seen, and mend that relationship. She did the exact opposite, and she said, basically, I would rather my subjects rot in hell than me have to make nice with them. So, as history shows us, she was guillotined, her husband was guillotined, her whole family was guillotined, and in case you don't know what that means, it's literally their heads were cut off, killed. That was the result of her being flippant and not willing to work with anyone and not having relationships with the people that were giving her their power, essentially, because that's what they were doing by obeying the monarchy, is they're lending that person their power. So Marie Antoinette very blatantly violated this law, but what this is really about, you know, in a 2020 context, we're in September of 2020 recording this, during these like 2020 times, this is more relevant in building relationships and having positive relationships with people and making sure that people generally like you and you're not burning bridges. This is actually super relevant in what we're seeing now with what you call cancel culture. And so you'll see that people, influencers especially, who develop super strong relationships with their fan base and don't just use them. They're not just popular because a lot of people like looking at them. They're popular because, yes, people like looking at them and maybe they're a bit of a spectacle, but they also have true relationships and bring value to the people around them. You'll see that those people who obey this law and quote unquote work on the hearts and minds will not get canceled, even though they'll have the same amount of stuff brought out about them. The people who do not work on the hearts and minds, so to speak, will be canceled. It's a very, very relevant situation that's ongoing right now. I think you can see this very blatantly with the whole Will and Jada Smith thing and how everybody just is somehow okay with that. But in other situations, people are in less controversial situations and being just totally wiped off the face of the earth for like one comment in a video, having their accounts deleted and, you know, millions of dollars in assets seized from them and crazy stuff. You can see those two different things happening. And the dichotomy you'll see is who is loved by the people and is part of the public icon and really has done a good job of working on the hearts and minds and has established themselves there and they're loved, and who has not. And the people who have not are prone to getting canceled. There's one thing that Robert Greene says in this book that I love, is he says that if you think just because there isn't a court anymore, there's not like a royal court and there's not courtesans and a king and queen and whatever, it doesn't mean that court politics have gone away. They've just molded into the current atmosphere and they've just transformed into something a little different. But these laws still apply, and if you want to be successful, you still have to abide by them. So one example that I want to give you is that of Willie Nelson. So Willie Nelson had, I don't know the exact details, but my understanding of it is that he had a lot of back taxes. He owed a ton of taxes to the IRS, to the extent to where he had a several thousand acre ranch in Texas that the federal government attempted to seize from him. And when they basically, it requires a court order, and there's basically a grace period to where if the person can come up with the money, they can save their property. Willie Nelson had built relationships with so many people. And in case you don't know who Willie Nelson is, look him up. He's like a country singer guy. A lot of old people love Willie Nelson. And so Willie Nelson had built so many positive relationships. He had worked on the hearts and minds, so to speak, that so many people came to his aid that they actually paid off his back taxes and paid off his land, and he owned it outright then, and it was basically gifted back to him by all the people who he had helped over the years. Here's my little cat saying hello to me. So I'm working on their hearts and minds by petting them. Works on your cats as well. So the point being, people like Willie Nelson who build up relationships and store away that relationship value like fat on a bear. When they need to go into hibernation or when they're in a tough spot, they can then rely on those people who they've, again, worked on the hearts and minds with to come through for them. Whereas if you have not done that, why would someone come through for you? If you've never done something nice for someone in a genuine way and helped them, why would they come through for you? A situation that is really close to home for me personally, both literally and metaphorically, is that of the owners of Franklin Manor in Tampa. I'm literally sitting here in my apartment. I can see what used to be Franklin Manor right out my window. And the owners of that club, one of them put out a tweet that people didn't like, and then it led to a bunch of stuff coming about him and his business activities and kind of the way that he was running his business. And it was very apparent to me as that was all going down that the way he had been building his relationships was not through the work on the hearts and minds and get people to love you. Even though you might have seen that on the surface, it might have looked like he was doing that. It was apparent to me as more of an insider that he was building it less on a solid foundation of really bringing value and helping people. And it was more about appearances and a bit of a shell game. And the interesting thing here is I actually really admire both of the owners of Franklin Manor, and I still support them, and I think that they're great guys. You know, everybody makes mistakes, and I think they're human, and I hope that they bounce back, and I hope them nothing but the best. Actually, it was one of their birthdays the other day, and I texted them happy birthday and was super glad to hear back from them. But that said, their story is basically a cautionary tale that if you don't build real relationships with people who will come to your aid when the chips are down, you get to find out. When something real happens, especially now in 2020 where somebody can just be wiped off the face of the earth like that, your whole business gone, and you just have to basically flee the country essentially, which is what one of them had to do, you get to see how good of a job you did at obeying this law 43, work on the hearts and minds. You get to see what happens. In their case, and I'm talking about the owners of Franklin Manor, they clearly did not do a good job in most cases. There were certain people who, stuck by him. I feel like I'm in that camp. They had a good relationship with me. So, I support them, even though they obviously made a mistake. It happens. But a lot of people who are on their staff and very close to them just jumped ship and just, flip-flopped right away. And so that's an indicator to me that they didn't obey this law. They didn't really work on the hearts and minds, and they didn't have people who truly loved them. They had people close to them who may have envied them, but it wasn't a real solid relationship. And it's like the thing from the Bible. It's like the man that builds his house on the sand, it gets washed away. The guy who digs deep and finds the rock and builds it on the rock, that's the guy whose house weathers the storm. So be the guy who builds on the rock. Obey Law 43, work on the hearts and minds. If you see all this cat hair floating around, it's because these cats are in my apartment being nuisances. Just kidding. Love them. I work on their hearts and minds by petting them and feeding them and giving them water. I'm a great pet owner. Anyways, I appreciate you watching. If you have not already, hit the subscribe button. It truly helps me out a lot, helps the channel out a lot. And the more people that hit subscribe out of a video makes this get shown to more people. So if you think more people should see this, subscribe, drop a like, leave me a comment, let me know what you thought. Also follow me on Instagram if you've not already, at Tampa Brad. Thank you for watching. Law number 44 is coming up super soon. See you very soon. Peace.